Hello everyone, I am Dr. Shin Kim. Through this semester, actually I'm teaching the United States history. Most of you are just now living in the United States, so if you know the history of the United States, maybe when you're getting green card or getting the citizenship, you must pass the test. Maybe this class give you good information. So listen to me carefully, and if you learn from me, maybe through this class, maybe you may know the history of United States very well. And today is actually first class, and before actually starting the real actually white American history, before doing that, I wanted to do the prehistory of the North America because personally, actually, I believe that the owner of the USA is Native Indians. But unfortunately, they lost their lands, and suddenly, most of them are disappear from our eyes. Now, where do they live? Through this class, maybe you may learn little bit, not a little bit, extremely sad story about Native Indians. So that called prehistory of North America means actually pre-Columbian era. That means Columbus. You know the Columbus, okay? He arrived in South America, and from that time, unfortunately, to the Native Indians, that's going to be disaster. But Columbus actually found North America and South America. But previously, actually, Native Indians actually they migrate from Eurasia. Eurasia means Europe and Asia. They actually coming from that era, okay, that area. So around 5 years ago, actually, I have a short mission trip to the Native Indian living in New Mexico, Navajo. Actually, I felt actually similarity between me and the Native Indians because we are looks like Asians. So because Native Indians actually they coming from Eurasia, Europe and Asia. They actually migration began 30,000 years ago, very long time ago. Okay, that means for a long time actually they have lived in this land as the first owner. Actually, Native Indians live in North America until white people, white Europeans actually coming to this land. That's why this land belonged to them, but unfortunately they lost their lands. Hundreds of Native Indian tribes live throughout North America. Even though I prepare this class, I recognize that there are so many a long history of Native Indians and so many Native Americans tribe. So I cannot, I cannot imagine how many Native Indian tribe lived in this land and how many of them. And this is actually the map of Native Indians. So if you look at the USA map, from the east to the west, from the north to the south, there are so many Native Indian tribes. Each actually Native Indian tribe live independently. Sometimes they cooperate each other, but most of them they dwell in their land and they live together. So it looks like a community. So if you look at this map, you may imagine that how many Native Indians tribe, okay? So many Native Indians actually they live throughout the whole actually USA North America area. So this actually map actually evidence because provide good evidence that they had lived in this land for a long time throughout the whole actually land. So uh, Native Indians actually they have a cultural diversity. That means there are so many maybe more than 100, maybe several hundred native Indian tribe. And every culture and race has made a substantial contribution to American history. So that's why I'm dealing with the native Indian in the first class of USA history. So because they are almost ignored, and their life has been disappeared from our eyes. Even though, yeah, I'm living in California, it is extremely hard to see native Indians. Looks like they are invisible. There are a lot of actually white Europeans, white guys, and like me, Asians living in here. A lot of Mexicans actually living in California. But it is extremely hard to see the native Indian in California, unfortunately. And but first American native Indians lived in many places in the United States, even in California. Actually, previously native Indians actually lived in this land. And these places are called regions. Usually there are the United States, North America has been divided three regions. Eastern woodland, plain, and southwest, three areas. Actually, they used the natural resources of their regions. It looks like they extremely respect the nature. They actually worshiping the animals, sometimes worshiping the moon, worshiping the trees, worshiping their ancestors, and they never destroy the nature. They actually living with actually trees and also animals. They believe that there is some spirit of the wood, spirit of the animals, so they respect them. And usually the eastern woodland. Actually, around more than 10 years ago, actually I lived in New Jersey. New York, and Georgia, that area actually is eastern woodland. So the Native Americans of the eastern woodland. As soon as when I actually living in eastern area, and around 10 years ago I moved to California, and I felt that eastern and western, it looks like a different country because of the weather, also racial distribution, and even the culture and buildings, so different from each other. So eastern woodland, that means eastern area, there are a lot of mountains, a lot of rivers, a lot of trees. So during the actually summer, it was totally covered with green, okay, tree and grass. So, but in California, it looks like a desert. So, totally different actually area. So that's why eastern woodland Indian live in forest, okay? There are a lot of tree, mountain, forest. So also there are a lot of rivers and streams. So that's why I'm enjoying fishing in New Jersey. There are so many rivers, so many lakes, so many trees. So I really enjoy the fishing in there. But as soon as I coming in here, in California, I cannot find any river. Even there are limited actually lake, not many actually lake. But in eastern woodland, that area covered with a lot of water, mountain trees. So to get their food from the river and stream, the eastern woodland Indians were very good fishermen. That's why when I live in New Jersey, I start fishing, because there are a lot of river and lake and full of fishes. Also, their houses were made of wood and tree bark. Tree bark means tree skins. Okay, the tree is big and it has a thick skin. Using the thick skin, they actually made their house. So look at the picture painting, and they living in some kinds of they made a village, and their house actually is made of stone and wood, and they living together. they stay there, okay? Usually when we are imagining of the native Indians, they riding on the horse and they moving and again. But that's not, that's only one part, okay? Especially the native Indians living in eastern woodland, they have a community, they have a village, they have a city, okay? So they made a village near to the river. They make a maybe they are good farmer, sometimes good hunter, but they are not riding on the horse, okay? So this is because of the region, okay? Different region. So the eastern woodland Indians ate vegetable with their meat and fish. There are a lot of fish, I said, and there are a lot of also animals in there. So they are great farmer. So three sisters of vegetable is corn, bean, squash. Yeah, during the summer I ate a lot of corn, and I also love the beans, and the squash is some kind of actually pumpkin. Okay, we actually love eating this one, and the forest has many animals that were food for the eastern woodland Indians. When I'm living in California, especially near to my village, it is extremely hard to see any animals. But when I'm living in New Jersey, there are so many deers, okay, so many bears. Even when I driving the car, one day I hit a deer, because deer are the garden of my house and on the street, even highway. Sometimes, yeah, deer coming into the highway, and when I driving the car, I hit the one deer. It was a huge deer. So there are a lot of dead body of deer on the highway because so many cars hit the deer. So it is a totally different actually area from California. I don't want to explain about every tribe, but you may heard of a Cherokee. Even following their name, there was a car named Cherokee. So Cherokee actually live in North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia. So I said Eastern, okay, Eastern. And also Iroquois. They are living in actually New York. I don't want to explain about what is their language and what is their religion and what is their custom, what is their art, what is their literature, because within 1 hour I cannot explain all about that. But just remember, there are so many tribes living in even eastern coast, okay, eastern coast, they're very near to the Europe. So one of the actually major actually tribe living in woodland, eastern woodland is Cherokee and Iroquois. Even it is hard to pronunciate. And in the middle area, okay, middle area, the Great Plains, that areas are flat, grassy area. So maybe Ohio, okay, Ohio, or in that area, there are a lot of actually broad field. Actually, they are farming area. But a long time ago, Great Plains, actually there are grassy area. And the first American who live in the plain region move often to follow buffalo. Buffalo is very important, okay? Buffalo, because their buffalo going to be their food, okay? Their life. So Native Indians living in actually middle area of the North America. Actually, they following buffalo because buffalo moving around, following their grass. So nomadic means they are not staying in one area. Comparing to the eastern woodland, they stay one place. They never move their house. That's why they made their house made of wood and stone, because they going to be stay there. But nomadic means with tents, okay? After sleeping one night, they moving another area. That's called nomadic Indians. So Sioux, Comanche, Blackfoot, They are tribe who live in Great Plains. They followed because they followed the buffalo. At the time, there are so many buffalo actually living in the middle of North America. The buffalo also called bison eat grass, and an adult buffalo can weigh around 2,000 pounds. They are huge animals, and they're going to be good food for the native Indians. And that's why they made a tent, okay? Look at the picture. These tents especially called teepee. And it is easily setting up, and it is easily actually also folding. Because next morning they moving another area. So the Indian could be moved quickly. Because if buffalo moving other area 30 miles, they must follow. They should follow buffalo. So that's why. And these homes were called tents and teepee. It can be actually easily actually established. It was made with buffalo hide, buffalo skin, and decorated with paint. It is very simple. You can sleep in there. The plain Indians hunted the buffalo for food and clothing. With the skin of the buffalo, they made their clothing. The plain Indians had to know how to ride the horse, because buffalo, they run, okay? They run faster than human. So that's why they need a horse, and they riding on the horse, and on the back of the horse they shooting the arrow. So they catch the buffalo because buffalo is extremely fast. So the native Indians kill only enough buffalo that they need for food. They didn't actually kill all of the buffalo. They believe the spirit of the buffalo. They respect it. That's why they only tonight dinner. Okay, for the only night dinner, they actually catch one buffalo, and they just follow it, but they never kill all of them. And also they did not waste any part of the animals. Meat and clothing, shelter tool, but with the bone they made the arrow. So they do not waste anything from buffalo. So usually, they are nomadic. That means they moving around the middle area. And many tribes had a governing council. They have their one chief, okay? They have a chief, and they decide by, looks like a democracy. Most members took part in make a decision. Everybody agree? Yeah, everybody agree. And they make a decision, and they follow it. And to protect themselves from other tribe, the men learn how to fight with bow and arrow. So look at the picture. There is one guy, he is warrior. He is warrior. Especially the man who wearing the buffalo head. Actually, he is one of the greatest warrior. And look at another picture. Yeah, they lying on the horse, and they shooting the arrow. They catch the buffalo. And sometimes, when they move to other area, they face with other tribe. In the case, sometimes there was war between two tribes. The more features warrior were, the great warrior wear a buffalo helmet. So maybe you may see some traditional native Indian, they actually wearing some bird, especially the eagle feather. They wearing on it, okay? So if you catch one buffalo, you can wearing one feather, but sometimes they wearing whole actually feather. Bird, eagle feather, that means he's great guys, especially great warrior. Only the great warriors actually wear buffalo helmet, like these guys. Don't touch him. He's good at killing. Don't challenge him, okay? So one of the famous actually tribe in the Great Plain is Sioux. It is extremely hard to pronounce it, but Sioux. They're living in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Montana, North and South Dakota, and actually they living in Middle East. And I don't want to explain about also their language, their belief, custom, art, literature, but just try to remember they are one of Sioux is the tribe. Sioux is one of the greatest native Indians, especially in Great Plain. And they are nomadic native Indian. They riding on the horse. Maybe usually when you watching some American movie, usually yeah, these guys Sioux, they are one of the representative, well-known native Indian to foreigner like me. Because when I living in South Korea a long time ago, I watch a lot of movie concerning about the cowboy and native Indians. Usually native Indians, they riding on the horse and they shooting their arrow. Sometimes cutting the head, something like that. Maybe, yeah, Sioux is one of the representative. And Southwest Indians, yeah, within 1 hour, it is extremely hard to explain all of the areas and characteristic of native Indians, but Southwest Indian, actually, they are California. Actually, when you visit the Great Canyon, some kinds of canyon in that area, Utah, maybe you may see this kind of picture. They made a building like an apartment, first floor, second floor with the stone or mud. The Southwest Indian live in the dry. Yeah, today this week is extremely hot, maybe over 100 degree. We living in very dry, hot area. That we are because we belong to the Southwest western area. There are not many forests. It is extremely hard. Yeah. Even when look at the mountain, there is no tree. So it is extremely hard to see the forest. But as I said, in the area of New York, Georgia, covered with a lot of forest mountains. And they built their home of mud and straw. Look at, yeah, some of them are made of stone, but mostly mud and straw. They building first floor, second floor, third floor like that. And the Indians made the wall of their homes very thick because this would keep the house cool. More thick, going underground, okay? Make more thick. That means inside is cooling. So like this one, like the New York, that is woodland. And North and South Dakota, that area, Great Plain. California, Southwestern Indian live in this area. And one of the famous actually tribe is Hopis or Pueblo. Actually, they're living in Mexico, Texas, Arizona, Nevada. Pueblo. Maybe you heard of this vocabulary when you're living in California. Pueblo. And also their major actually food is actually corn. So yeah, there are a lot of corn in this area. Even in market, they're selling a lot of corn. And I also purchased a lot of corn during this summer. And yeah, that's almost the end of the history of Native Indians. And I'm a little bit talking about Thanksgiving. And this first semester, actually, there was Thanksgiving break because it starts from the actually history of the Native Indians. Thanksgiving in 1620, Mayflower, some kind of first white Europeans, actually, they coming to here. Around 112 passengers alive in Cape Cod in Massachusetts, the eastern woodland area, okay? There are a lot of trees. Look at the picture. And during the first winter, half of the pilgrim died because it is extremely cold. When I live in New Jersey during the winter, there are a lot of snow, cold, and ice. There are a lot of car accidents after snow. So because it is due to cold and disease. And Abenaki Indian, or yeah, the painting actually describe Abenaki Indians. Okay, with the gun, actually by foot, they go up to the mountain. And so Abenaki Indians, one day they recognized around 100 people living there. And but according to them, they starved, no food. That's why Abenaki Indians are coming down and taught white guys how to cultivate corn, extract the sap from the maple tree. Yeah, from the skin of the tree, actually there are some water coming out. It is a good source, okay? So, they're called sap. Extract the sap from the maple tree. Catch fish and how to avoid the poisonous plants. They're teaching about that. And because of the help of the native Indians, they could survive. So they wanna give thanks to the native Indian. That's why in November 1621, white guys invited the native Indians to a celebratory feast. Because the native Indians help the white guys to survive in this dangerous actually land. So they thanks to native Indians. And in 1941, President Roosevelt actually he made Thanksgiving a federal holiday. Yeah. Thanksgiving holiday not actually has a actually long history. It has a long history, but becoming holiday is a recent one. So whenever actually Thanksgiving approach to you, me, and we must remember native Indians. Native Indians help the white guys how to survive in this land. So that's why we give thanks. Not only give thanks to God, but also we must give thanks to the native Indians. But unfortunately, Columbus here and so many Europeans coming to North America, and they dwelling in the eastern area, and they made a village, and they throw away native Indians, and the more white guys coming in North America, the more actually native Indians losing their land, and they're losing their authority, their actually dignity as a human being. Unfortunately, that sad thing really happened. So white Europeans actually made native Indian Americanized. Look at the picture. They actually made native Indian to the wearing European style of clothing and cutting the hair and teach the English and teach the European culture. That called be Americanization. Anglo-Saxon, okay? Especially Anglo-Saxon from England. Actually, they felt that Indians were savage. That means they are so wild, looks like animals, and they should be Americanized. They decided that. And unfortunately, Anglo-Americans, they took the land of native Indians, and Indians should be civilized, which means turning them into farmer, usually in the middle area. Great Plains, do you remember? In the Indians who live in Great Plains, they are hunter. They riding on the horse and they following the buffalo. But Anglo-Saxon people actually they made Anglo-Saxon made native Indian to the farmer. So from hunter to farmer. So that's not actually their culture. That's not their tradition. But they force it. So also native Indians had to leave their land. Usually there is no individual property to native Indians. They establish community, so they actually own the by community. There is no individual house, no individual land, no individual things. But as you know, Anglo-Saxon people, white guys, they have individual property, and they took the land of the native Indians, and they expelled them from their land. So unfortunately, native Indians actually lost their land. Also, they lost also their tradition. Some tribes were forced to give up their names and languages. So even the white guys forced them using English, and instead of their traditional name, traditional language, they forced them use English. So even they took their children, and native Indians' children were forced to go to the American school, learn English, and also learn white culture, and they lost their tradition. Unfortunately, that thing really happened to native Indians. Yeah, usually the imperialism and the colonization, during that process, usually native people actually they lost their culture, their land, their actually nationality, their identity, and most of them become the civilized like the Europeans. Unfortunately, throughout the human history, that thing really happened to our real life. And finally, I don't want to explain who the history, but finally, USA was born. The USA had the independence from England in 1776, and from that time they start removed. USA government removed native Indian from their land. Unfortunately, that thing really happened. Especially gold. Yeah, everybody loves gold. Gold is precious. Gold was found in the southeastern state. Actually, southeastern state actually belonged to native Indians. But the white guys recognized there are a lot of gold in that area. Finally, the American government in 1830, American USA Congress passed the Indian Removal Act. They wanted to remove them. They want to force them to move their land and actually send them to the desert. So the removal of minimum actually 90,000 Indians to Oklahoma. They moved to Oklahoma. They actually living in Georgia or Tennessee, actually eastern woodland. They lived there. But unfortunately, gold was found there, and the USA government actually tried to remove them. And the removal of minimum 90,000 Indians to Oklahoma become known as the Trail of Tears. Maybe many of you know the vocabulary tear. When you cry, there is a tear coming down. Okay. It is a sad moment. And in the fall of 1838, USA Army troops forcefully moved the Cherokee Indian into the reservation. So this is one of the reasons why in our community why we cannot find any native Indians in our village, because almost 200 years ago, American government, USA government forced them leave their land, and they sent them to in some restricted area. So they called actually Indian reservation. They sent them to the desert. So yeah, it is extremely actually sad story. Cherokee were loaded with 645 wagons. Actually, they riding on the horse, or many of them walking on the streets. But coming to the north area, at the time there was winter, and so many people die when they moved. Especially old men and babies die when they going to the Oklahoma. But the American USA Army, actually, they didn't provide enough food. they didn't provide enough actually blanket. That's why so many people died during going to the way of the Oklahoma. Yeah, this is so cruel. This is tragedy. So whenever actually there is a bright side, that means there are sacrifice of other people. So unfortunately, the history is written by the winner, and the loser actually never writing their own history. That's why when we study about the USA history, we never talking about this sad story. But this is a real story that happened around 200 years ago. And you may see the map. So Cherokee, Creeks, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole, so many native Indians who live in eastern woodland. They were forcefully removed from their area. They must go to the Oklahoma or Arkansas in that area. So American government made that area Indian restriction, okay, limited area. Only Indians living there in the desert. So they lost their original land and they moved to the desert. And there were little food along the trail. As I said, they forcefully moved the native Indian. USA government did that cruel things. And American government didn't provide enough they didn't provide enough food. So there is no food, even though several months walking to, going to the Arkansas, Oklahoma, they don't have enough actually good. So there were snowstorm with freezing temperature. That's why many died due to the lack of the food, ill treatment, cold, and exposure. Actually, mortality rate was substantial, total around 8,000. So many people dying. So many native Indians died when they forcefully moved to their actually left their land and moving to the desert area. So try to look at the map again. Trail of Tears, okay, from the Florida, Georgia, Alabama, or Tennessee, in Mississippi, in that area. That area is a lot of river, actually plain farming area, but they must go to the Oklahoma, Arkansas, little bit near to the Mexico. That means a little bit desert area. They must move that area, and they, as soon as they arrive there, they cannot coming out of that Indian reservation. They must stay. They must live in there. They cannot leave that area. So it happened actually 200 years ago. So many native Indians still live in that area, unfortunately. That's why we cannot see any actually native Indians. Actually, through my whole life, I see only one native Indians who living in my village. I saw a lot of African Americans and a lot of Mexicans, a lot of Asians, a lot of white guys, but it is extremely hard because 200 years ago, American government actually sent them to some restricted area. So native Indians, they are not considered of American citizen. They have no right to vote even. So they are not considered of citizen, American citizens. So that's why American government tried to remove them from their history. So American government forced to move native Indian to a few reservation area set aside for them. So they lived by themselves, gave the army authority to deal forcefully with any group that refused to move. So native Indians, I wanted to stay here. In that case, they shoot him. They shooting them. They killed, they murdered them. That's why they're using the army. Land on the reservation was unfit for the farming or hunting. As I said, that is a desert area. So eastern woodland, that area is a farming area. But they were removed from that area. Suddenly they were sent to the desert. So it is impossible for farming, or it is extremely hard to see the buffalo in that area. American USA government failed to deliver promised food and supplies. That's why so many native Indians died. Good delivered were poor, even quality. Look at the picture. The white guy is getting fatter and fatter, but native Indians become thinner and thinner. They don't have any food in their hands, but by the land of the native Indians, white guys become richer and richer, fat and fatter, because they stole their land. This is one of the good actually description about how the USA government deal with native Indians. Wow, look at the picture. Even white guys to kill so many buffalo. That is buffalo leather, buffalo skins. As I previously said, native Indians, they only kill one buffalo for their dinner. They respect their animals. But as soon as the white guys coming, they kill all of the buffalo. They actually need the leather, okay, skin, making a clothing, making a bag, like that. So conflict between the white and native Indians on the plain occurred. Native Indians tried to preserve their way of living, but white settlers took and charged the land. And American hunters targeted buffalo to sell their hides in the east, the leather, the buffalo skins. And the railroad company hires a hunter to kill buffalo to feed the railroad crew. From the east to the west, they actually building a huge railroad, and they required a lot of people working there. And in order to provide food, they kill a lot of buffalo also. And to prevent the giant herd from blocking the train. So when the train going that way, but the buffalo blocked the train, so that's why they also killed a lot of buffalo. So now, in the modern day, it is extremely hard to any wild buffalo. Only you go to the Yellowstone, you may see a few buffalo living there, because around 200 years ago, white guys killed or murdered the buffalo. And native Indians also, the Dawes Act in 1887 tried to dissolve Indian tribe to redistributing the land, but that is also another way of stealing Indians' land. So look at the picture. Indian land for sale. So they steal the land of Indians and they sell it to the white guys. So get a home of your one. It is cheap, okay, cheap, and easy payment, perfect title. So the land actually, so many land of Indians was stolen and it was sold to the white guys. It is designed to foster growing Indian poverty. So previous picture, the white guys become richer and richer. But by the profit of the white guys, actually native Indians become poor and poorer. They resulted in many Indians losing their land to speculate. So Indians totally lost their land, and they only had limited property in Indian reservation. That's all. And location of Native Americans reservation. So look at the east side: New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. Actually, there are a lot of native Indians living there, but most of them moved to the Oklahoma, as I said, just above of the Texas, Oklahoma. You may see the purple color. So most actually Indians who are living in woodland, eastern woodland area, they must move to the Oklahoma, and even the Arizona, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico. Actually, around 5 years ago, I go to the visit Navajo tribe, native Indians who are living in New Mexico. So they living in Indian reservation, unfortunately. So in that area, only when you visit that area you may see the native Indians, but other ways, other area, it is extremely hard to see the native Indians because their life was limited in that area. So unfortunately, Indian Reorganization Act in 1934. Finally, little bit USA government gives some freedom to the native Indians. Indian Reorganization Act. This law gave native Indians greater control over their destiny. Finally, little bit actually freedom to native Indians, especially in Indian reservation area. Number one, economic. Their land would be no longer be broken up into individual farms. Previously, even everybody has individual house, individual property, individual land. That is Western culture. But as I said, native Indians actually they don't have any concept of individual land, individual farms. They establish community. Everything belongs to the community. So finally, little bit actually respect the culture of native Indians, and the American government give economic freedom. Number two, cultural. Children could attend school on the reservation, Indian reservation. They established their one school. Previously, they actually force native Indian children go to the white guys' schools, learn English, learn Western culture, forget about their tradition. But finally, according to the Indian Reorganization Act, finally they get the freedom. Particular, tribe could get elected tribal council to govern their reservation. In that area, they have their one policy, their one politics. So little bit they have a little freedom. So legislation gave Indian greater control over their affairs. So facts that changed native Indian life. The first thing is white guys coming, okay? White guys coming to North America. So white moving onto their land. White guys steal the land over native Indians. Number two, they killing over the buffalo. Actually, buffalo is the source of native Indians, especially who live in Great Plains. So the killing of a buffalo means killing of native Indians. And the USA Army attack. Yeah, there are a lot of movies. Actually, when you watch the Arab movie, actually U.S. Army is their angel, but native Indians devil. So angel must kill devil. USA Army must kill the evil native Indians. We watch a lot of drama, watch a lot of movies dealing with that issue. But on the contrary, actually USA Army is evil from my perspective. And the reservation policy, they are limited. Their land is limited. Their life is limited in that area. Force native Indian to fit into the white culture. So unfortunately, through that actually way, native Indian had a tragedy because of the landing of the white Americans. This is one part of the USA history. It is dark side of also American history. Thank you for listening to my lecture. And about the Thanksgiving coming, try to remember there are native Indians who help the white guys to survive. And try to remember this is belong to the native Indians. Thank you. I'll see you next class. Thank you.